In this video, we'll discuss about switch your perspective. Oftentimes, people feel that their focus is not under their control. You may have had the same suspicions about yourself. But the truth is that what you focus on is what you experience. If you spend too much time focusing on things you don't need, your mind gets caught in a web. You try to multitask, switch from one thing to the next, or simply end up putting things off. And with time, it becomes hard to break out of the habit of switching and being distracted all the time. However, the simple truth is that your happiness depends on the way you think and how you respond to the environment you live in. Perspective has a huge role to play when it comes to your happiness. So how do you train your mind to stay more focused, and how can you switch your perspective? Here are some steps you can take to do so. Stay with one thing at a time. Too many people are guilty of doing too many things at the same time. When you demand your attention to jump from one thing to another, you will have a busy, fractured, and most likely unproductive day. Switching tasks frequently requires a supreme level of functioning, meaning that you have to use a lot of brain power and energy even before you start a task. No wonder it ends up draining your effectiveness. Zen teaches you to do the exact opposite. With Zen habits in your life, you will choose a task that needs doing and then stick with it. A good starting point may be to ask why this particular task is important for you. If you can give yourself a good enough reason why this task means more than others, then that's where you need to start. As you start the task, shift all your attention to it. Shut out any distractions and clear your mind. Don't think about or start doing something else until you have finished what you started. Train yourself to focus on the task at hand and resist the urge to look elsewhere. This practice will keep you steadily grounded in the present and let you give your best to whatever task you choose to do. This rule is applicable to even the most simple of things. For instance, when you eat, just eat. When you pour water, just do that. When you go walking, just walk. In instances where you may have to move on to something else, at least put away the unfinished task to return to later. Taking it slow in this way doesn't mean you're being lazy. What it does mean is that you're doing it right. You may be doing less, but you're doing it well. On the way, you'll have to deal with everyday distractions, like the digital world, for instance. In fact, there is now a lot of research pointing to the fact that digital distractions are making people not only dumb, but also twitchy. Not only does this concern stop you from concentrating, it also stops you from resting, both of which are equally damaging. Focus on the process. Changing perspective requires your focus. You can't adopt a positive life if you can't learn to focus. Focusing on the process and how things should be dealt with will make you wiser. Here, it's important that instead of focusing on the outcome, focus on the process. This will help you in quite a few different ways. For instance, focusing on the process will eliminate external factors. What this means is that decisions based on outcomes often end up using wrong techniques. But when you focus on how to get things done, you are better able to polish your skills. As you work your way through something, you realize the pitfalls and also discover ways to remediate the problems. Plus, focusing on the process also lets you enjoy the moment. You become more engaged in the present and at what you're doing, and you will do it better too. Another perk of focusing on the process rather than the outcome is that you get more control over what you're doing. In other words, you don't have control over the outcome, but you do have control over the process. When you give something your best, the outcome is likely to be good as well. If anything, focusing on the process will make you more confident in the way it lets you learn skills. These skills will make you better at decision making. You will have fewer worries about the future, and your focus will be on the present. To better focus on the process, engage in only one thing at a time. Do the work slowly and deliberately. This doesn't mean lazily, only that you need to take your time and move purposefully. When doing so, make your actions deliberate instead of random. There is also a need to put space between things. What this means is that try not to schedule things too close together, but leave some gaps in between. This will give you a more relaxed structure to work with. It will also provide some wiggle room if one task takes longer than expected. The whole point of Zen is to enjoy what you're doing, so try not to rush through your life. Don't rationalize. Rationalization is defined as something where you apparently come up with rational explanations for certain behaviors. The point is to make that behavior seem optimal, even when it's not. However, the same definition could also lead you to conclude that rationalization essentially is the act of making excuses. Either way, rationalizing doesn't always help, which is why you need to avoid it. When you want to incorporate Zen habits into your life, you need to stop making excuses. As you've seen earlier, Zen does require a certain degree of discipline. So while missing one day of meditation won't derail your progress much, making it a habit certainly can. The biggest problem with skip days like these is that they eventually lead to quitting or giving up. The one-time exception then becomes the rule. Such getting off track can make it very difficult to get back on track. That's why Zen encourages establishing a daily routine, as we will see in an upcoming chapter. For now, let's talk a bit more about rationalization. You use rationalization when you try to justify less than optimal behavior or feelings. So what you're doing is finding a way to distort facts to make things appear better than they actually are. Here's something to think about. You say you're going to follow a diet plan, but that only lasts the first 3 days. Or you have every intention of going to the gym since you got a membership, but only do it once. So what happens here? A few possibilities could be that you aren't serious about it, you forget why it's important, or it becomes too difficult. You may also give up in disappointment, or you start to rationalize. When something becomes difficult, your mind rationalizes, telling you it's okay if you skip something once, or it's okay to have just one more since you worked so hard for it. While this may all sound reasonable, it starts to sabotage your plans. And once you start believing these rationalizations, sticking to anything becomes next to impossible.